Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 146.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on true custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. I create exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores. One of the best things I ever did for my personal golf game was in early 2016 to take a fluid motion factor class from its creator, Stephen Yellin, and then to become certified as the fluid motion factor instructor. I'm delighted to have Stephen back today. This is the third interview he's done with me, and he has some amazing successes to talk about and also information on how to make swing changes and how to practice effectively. Enjoy this interview with Stephen Yellin, creator of the Fluid Motion Factor program.
www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 146 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. And I'm excited to welcome back Stephen Yellin, creator of the Fluid Motion Factor, a revolutionary golf program. And you know, Stephen, before we dive in, using the principles for your program, I was just thinking, I haven't played for a couple months, I'm a lot calmer on the golf course. Besides, right? Besides, I think sometimes playing in ways that I get surprised by. So, Stephen teaches the Fluid Motion Factor in the United States and around the world in a lot of places. So, Stephen, thanks for doing this today on Valentine's Day, right? Yeah.
It's my pleasure, Tony.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Well, I think it's been a little over 2 years since we talked. So maybe share a little about some of the most interesting things that you've been doing in the last year or two related to the Fluid Motion Factor work that you do.
Well, you know, Tony, the Fluid Motion Factor program was developed over an extensive period of time, starting when I had my zone experience in 1975 while on the tennis team at University of Pennsylvania. And often I revisit it to see what more can be added. And I've added a few things over the years. And, you know, after I added these things, it felt like, I pretty much exhausted this understanding this very subtle realm from which zone experiences are generated from. But the success seems to still be happening. Scott McCarron, who's been using the program for 3 years, won the Schwab Cup last year as the top senior on the Champions Tour. Won about $3 million.
He did okay. Yeah,
he did okay. He uses the program on every shot. Gabby Lopez, who I worked with for 3 years, ever since she was a senior at University of Arkansas, and then when she became a rookie on the LPGA Tour, won the opening tournament of the season on the LPGA Tour, the Tournament of Champions, which you have to have won a tournament in 2019 to qualify. So, it's encouraging. It seems that the program works. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's great. Boy, what amazing validation, right?
Well, it is good validation, and it always felt like I developed, I don't want to say discover, because, it's not myself who discovered how fluid motion is produced, but it's always nice to have success stories. It makes you feel that, you've moved in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, before we dive into a few specific questions, and, it's interesting. I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, I don't think you have written or may not even write a third book, but you said It's Just the Opposite would be the title. I went back and looked at the old notes. But talk a few minutes about just a few basics of the things that applying fluid motion practice principles can do for golfers.
Well, as it turns out, just like the heart works one way, the kidneys work one way, and the lungs work one way, to produce fluid motion in any sport, including golf, it's universal for all people. So when you're amateur or you're a high school golfer, a college golfer, or a professional golfer produces a really fluid shot, they have experienced the same processes in the mind. So these are not my processes. This is all about neurophysiology. So I understand what those processes are, and I teach a very simple technique that allows someone to access those processes by design, because usually they just show up by chance. So when golfers go through my program, essentially what happens is they become more consistent. They hit more consistent shots in a round of golf.
They also are more accepting of the fact, I think, when they don't hit a shot, that, they have a better understanding of things that are going on, right? Yeah,
exactly. What happens with golfers, and I've asked golfers who have won major tournaments around the world, that if they had a good ball striking day that particular day and they walked off the course and someone asked them, do you fundamentally understand why you played so well? If you ask them enough questions, they would say, no, I'm not too sure. And then they go out the next day and they do what they thought they were doing the previous day, and they have the opposite results. And you ask them, why did you play so poorly? They all say, well, I thought I was doing what I did the day before, but I got the opposite results. So golfers, even on the professional level, they are not too sure what happens when they play well, fundamentally, and they're not too sure what happens when they don't play well. So they're in mystery land. Okay, they just don't know, and if you don't know why you're doing something well, you're always going to be on the edge of your seat, because you never know when you're going to go south, and then you don't know why you went south, and then you don't know why you corrected it. And of course, people say it's the swing, my swing. Well, then I ask, what happened to your swing last week? Because muscle memory doesn't break down, so they're at a loss. So when someone goes through my program, there's absolutely no doubt in their mind what happens when they play well, and there's no doubt in their mind what happens when they don't play well on a very fundamental level, the most fundamental level.
Yeah. It's great stuff. And like I said in the beginning, it gives you a level of calmness about playing. This past summer, I think you knew that I had some significant surgery during the summer, and
yes,
it was amazing. And I haven't played for 3 months. It's kind of crazy. But I look back during the summer, and there was a period of time after I came back and started playing. There were about 6 rounds in a row. Well, for me, I played, scoring-wise, about as good as I'm probably going to be able to do, and my swing speed was probably 10 miles an hour less because I was recovering. And I just thought, wow. I've been really amazed by that, by those kinds of results, and it was part of acceptance of, okay, go play, but also knowing some of the things you've taught me.
Right. Well, excellent. Congratulations, Tony.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Well, we sort of queued up a couple of really interesting questions today to talk about, and the first one is: can you share with listeners, from your knowledge of applying fluid motion principles, what golfers need to attend to when they're going to effectively change their swings, because golfers are always changing their swings, aren't they, right? Or many golfers are always thinking they should change their swings.
Yes. Well, I think it's an important question, and I don't think the question has been addressed. So I would like to address it on a fundamental level. So when you're changing your swing, you're asking your body to get into positions that it's not used to getting into. And it's very much akin to a potter who's going to mold some clay into different shapes. So what's the first thing that a potter does? Well, he moistens the clay. He makes it malleable so that he's able to move the clay in whatever position that he wants the clay to move into, whether he's making an ashtray, a vase, whatever. And I say ashtray because that's what I used to do in summer camp when I was 10 years.
Yeah.
So they don't make ashtrays. You know what I mean.
Yeah, right.
So what's the first thing you have to do for a golfer when he's going to change something in his swing? Is the first thing he has to do is make the mind malleable, because the swing doesn't control the swing. The swing doesn't control the swing. It's the processes in the mind that control the swing. So if he makes the mind malleable, and I define malleable by infusing more silence into the mind, then when the mind gives the body direction to do this or that with the club or with the arms or the hands, the body is a slave to the mind and will immediately respond. But it's just the reverse on how golfers go about changing their swing. They start with the body and not with the mind. And the mentality with the body is, when they're on the range, I did it, I didn't do it. I did it, I didn't do it. Meaning, I made a swing incorporating the new move. I did not make a swing incorporating the new move. So when you have this mentality of I did it, I didn't do it, you're not associating a successful move with the processes in the mind that actually allowed you to make it successful. So when there's a successful motion, of course the body did something that you wanted it to do, but you have to congratulate that second because it originated with the mind, with subtle processes in the mind. And again, it's just accessing deeper levels of silence in the mind. So when you have the mentality, the outlook, I did it, I didn't do it, when you did it, when you actually made a successful move, but you're not associating it with the processes in the mind that allowed you to make a successful move, the deposit you're putting in the basal ganglia, which stores muscle memory, is a very weak deposit because it's not being associated with the origin of what you experienced in the mind when you did it successfully. But the real way to work on a move, changing your swing so you can actually make it quicker, is that you associate, when you did make the correct move, you associate it with the processes in the mind that allowed you to make it. So then you're depositing in the basal ganglia the move with the processes in the mind that allowed you to make it, make the move successfully, and it's a much more powerful deposit in the muscle memory bank, 10 times as powerful, I would say. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, and it gets even more. I don't know if difficult is the word, but then when people have the putting yips, right? And there's just so much going on in your mind when they have that, and it's sort of changing. I don't know if changing the motor programs in a way is a way to say it, but your mental motor programs. But people make a bigger deal out of it than even other swing changes, right?
Yes. It all starts in the mind, Tony.
Yep.
And because the mind has not been understood by golf instructors, that there are different levels of the mind, and accessing different levels of the mind will allow you to access different levels of intelligence of the body. Everyone is throwing darts and searching for this and that, and they're really not going to the origin. They're just not. Yeah. They're not to the origin.
Yeah, for the real understanding of how motions occur.
Exactly. If an instructor or a student or a player cannot answer one very simple question, then they'll always be searching, and usually in the wrong place. And the question is very simple. How is fluid motion produced, and why does it break down? That's it.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah. Now the other question that we decided to talk about is effective practice. Some of them, and particularly the misconceptions about how golfers should effectively practice and what really needs to be practiced to be successful. It's a little similar to the first one, but not exactly.
Let's talk about an accomplished golfer, okay? Someone who has a repeatable motion. This also applies to someone who is learning, but I think the example will be clear if we apply it to an accomplished golfer. And the fact that people don't know this fact is very precarious in their journey to reach their potential as a golfer. And it should be one of the first things they learn, but it's one of the things that they never learn, okay? And this is not Stephen Yellin talking. This is neurophysiology talking. And that is, once a motion has been grooved, and of course we're talking about an accomplished golfer whose motion has been grooved, that motion cannot break down. Because if it could break down, then you'd have to learn how to do any kind of motion. Throw a ball, kick a ball, drive a car. What breaks down is the ability to access the motion. That's why good golfers play good one day and not good the next day. Now, of course, if someone was videotaping their swing, when they played well, they could see they got the club in this position or that position correctly. And when they didn't play well, they didn't get the club in this position or that position correctly. But the question is, why didn't they get it into that position correctly? And of course, why they didn't get it into that position correctly is they didn't access what they already own. This is a major paradigm shift, actually, for all athletes. So when a good golfer goes to the range, it's really tangential for his ability to, or her ability to, reach their potential as golfers if they think they're practicing their swing, because muscle memory doesn't break down. It just doesn't break down. What they should be practicing is the ability to access what they already own. It's a completely different shift, because unless you understand that muscle memory doesn't break down, you always feel you have to reinvent the wheel on every shot. In other words, live in this checklist city.
Yeah, checklist. That's a term I never heard you say before. That's a new one. Checklist city. I like that.
You're living in checklist city. It's very tedious. It's very exhausting, and it's completely unnecessary. And it actually detracts you from reaching your potential as a golfer, because if you live in checklist city on the range, don't think you're going to change cities when you get to the course. You're still going to be living in that city. So every shot is this big Broadway drama presentation of, I have to make sure to do this and this and this. And then you walk off the course and you're physically and emotionally drained and it feels like you went to war, and then you start questioning, what the heck am I doing out here? So practicing at the range should be practicing the very abstract concept, and having the mind abstract, because that's the only way you can access what you already own. And it's a completely different priority of what you're doing every time you hit a ball on the range.
I have a couple of friends that, before, when I get to play, I'll go down to the range with them before, and we'll hit balls. And it's been kind of fun. Almost every time I hear one of them kind of gripe about, I can't hit the ball today. I say, well, goodness, so maybe you're just going to let it go a little bit more when you play instead of
right.
And not just believe that's, it can't work when you're playing, right? And maybe they do too. Maybe their level of acceptance just gets a lot higher and sometimes when they don't hit it so good, right? Or what they say is hitting it so good.
Yeah, they're missing some of the most fundamental things as far as sports is concerned. I mean, the foundation. The foundation is not the swing. Someone tells someone, I want you to get the club here, I want you to get your body here. Well, how do you do it? How do you do it? The question is, how do you transfer intention into execution? And there's no understanding. There's zero understanding of that. And it should be 100% understanding. So that is why I have been given this mission in life to enlighten golfers everywhere.
Would you say that, when you did it start really at that first zone experience and you knew that this is what you were going to do? I mean, that's not, not a question I said I was going to ask you, but were you kind of sure that was going to happen?
There was no doubt in my mind. I had this zone experience in a tennis match playing on the University of Pennsylvania tennis team. When I had my zone experience, I knew it was a gift from nature, and I knew that it was one of the most important events that would happen in my life because sports was such an integral part of my life. I had no idea where it would end up, but I knew it was extraordinarily significant. So to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. It's not everybody is able to find that, right, in their lives. It's an incredible blessing, I think, because like you said, a couple of people for sure, and it's back to the University of Washington too. I mean, you didn't talk about them. I think it was the girls, right? But some of those folks are applying what you're doing too, and many others.
Oh yeah, University of Washington in 2016 won the NCAA championship, and on TV, and the coach Mary Lou Mofler went through the program 5 times within 2 years. She couldn't get it for the program. So yes, it seems to work because fluid motion is produced identically for every athlete. So if you can give them a technique to access how it's produced, they have a much better chance of playing consistent.
Well, before we kind of end, Stephen, any other particular success things that you want to share?
Listen, Scott McCarron is number 1 senior in the world. Okay, won $3 million. I don't have to say anything after that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Right. Okay. And I knew he was obviously from following you on social media and stuff that was going on. So pretty amazing.
And Gabby, she just won the Tournament of Champions. She's a champion of the champions. So it works on that level. It works on every level, and it's a great thrill for me to teach this program to people because it's what they've been looking for. And my goal when I teach them is for them to be, and it's their birthright. Okay, this is their birthright if they want to play competitive golf. And my goal when I teach them is for them to be completely self-sufficient, so they don't need a teacher, and And when that happens, I feel my job has been done.
Yeah. Well, before we kind of end and let you have a chance to say any other final things, when I met you at the show, you were sitting at the Iconic Golf booth, I believe. Yes. Talk a little bit about I think it's a new relationship with those folks.
Well, the future, it looks like golf instruction is going online more and more. And Iconic Golf is a bunch of very smart people who put together a very sophisticated software program, digital program online that allows instructors for their students to take programs online and to evaluate them based on that. So Iconic Golf will be selling my program. It'll be available to PGA, LPGA. They've already made associations with the PGA of America and with R&A in England and Scottish Golf Association, Irish Golf Association. So more people will be able to take programs that normally would not be available to them. So I'm very excited about this, and my goal is for every golfer on this planet to be exposed to this program, because I feel it'll give them the best chance of reaching their goals in golf.
That's a pretty neat thing to have happen. So that's cool. Yeah. Any other final words you want to say before we end up another great interview?
Well, Tony, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with an enlightened teacher such as yourself. And if someone wants to find out more information about my program, my website is Fluid Motion Golf. It's all one word, fluidmotiongolf.com. And I would be delighted to teach you this very historic program. And
I got to see it firsthand for 3 hours at the show, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, and went through the certification. But the other thing, those of you listening, if you just want to get some really neat bits and pieces, is to follow you on Facebook, because you write things on Facebook, not always once a week, right? But everyone is interesting. And it also stirs people up sometimes, isn't it? Isn't it kind of fun? Because you'll get some replies from people and they say, that can't be right. Which I think is great. I think that's, I love that myself when I see that happen, right? Because that's how you learn.
Yeah, it's fine. And I always say, look, this is not my program. I did not invent the processes in the mind that allow someone to execute a fluid golf swing or a fluid pitch or fluid free throw. This is nature. So, you can argue, which is fine because you haven't been exposed to it, but essentially you're arguing against science. So eventually you'll probably have to acquiesce to higher knowledge. Let's put it that way.
And that's good for everybody. Stephen, thanks again for today. I appreciate it. I know we'll talk again sometime in the future. Hang in for just a minute afterwards. And again, thank you for sharing today.
Thanks, Tony. It's been a real pleasure.
The Golf Improvement Podcast is sponsored by Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf. Tony creates exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores.
Stephen, thanks again for being back with me and sharing your insights on how to make swing changes and how to practice effectively. I put links in the show notes to Stephen's Fluid Motion Factor website and also to his Facebook page, where he often posts some of his knowledge based on the science of neurophysiology for how to play your best golf. I have absolutely no doubt that when I play my best golf, I'm using information that I learned from Stephen. No doubt. My shout out today is for Diamond Golf International, where I purchase all of the Wishan golf components that I use in many of my custom fittings. They're located in the United Kingdom, and so I usually call them really early in the morning. but they're always willing to help me obtain club components at the exact loft, lie, face angle, and head weights that I need for golfers. There's a link in the show notes to their website. Well, that's it for today. Well, it is about to happen, and I'm really excited. My next podcast, episode 147, will be a podcast about a podcast. And what the heck is that? Well, tune in and find out. See you in 2 weeks.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com